Excuse me, are you Adam Graham?
The very same. And this is my old-time radio snack wagon.
Welcome to the Old-Time Radio Snack Wagon, where we serve up a bite-sized portion of old-time radio. And now, here's your Snack Wagon host, Adam Graham.
Welcome to the Old-Time Radio Snack Wagon. This week, we're going to be serving up an episode of Yarns for Yanks. Yarns for Yanks began as a World War II continuation for the armed forces of Frank Graham's series Nightcap Yarns, in which Graham, no relation, as radio's original one-man theater, performed all the parts in a 15-minute drama. We played episodes of both Nightcap Yarns and Yarns for Yanks featuring Graham as part of last year's Amazing World of Radio Summer Series, Men of a Thousand Voices. And hopefully we'll get to hear more one-man theater on the old-time radio snack wagon as we go along. Today we have something different. In addition to Graham's dramas, the Armed Forces Radio Service opened Yarns for Yanks to celebrities to read stories for service members in more of what we'd consider a short audiobook format. And we're going to hear one of those today. The reader is Kay Kyser, known as the Old Professor for his popular radio music quiz series, Kay Kyser's Kollege of Musical Knowledge. The series ran for 10 years, from 1939 to 49, and Kyser's work on the series was honored with admittance to the Radio Hall of Fame in 1990. In addition to his radio work, he was also a very popular band leader in his own right, making many successful records. He also appeared in 14 films, mostly as himself. Today's story is a perfect fit for Kyser. It's about love, manners, reputation, blackmail, and most importantly, barrelhouse and boogie woogie. Here now is the Yarn for Yanks presentation of Hot Piano.
Soldiers, sailors, Marines, this is for you. Yarns for Yanks. Hello, men. This is Frank Graham. We have another guest yarn spinner on this edition of Yarns for Yanks, sent your way by the Special Service Division of the War Department. He's one of your favorite stars, and he's here to tell you one of your favorite stories. The yarn is Richard English's Hot Piano. Our storyteller is the star of stage, screen, and radio, the old professor himself, Kay Kyser.
Howdy, fellas. How are y'all? From your letters to us back here, we know you all like a good yarn, so tonight the old professor is here to tell you a story about an old professor. It's strictly a barrelhouse and boogie woogie story, but I hope you like it. It's called Hot Piano. Let's go. Now, Professor Barnes was dancing at the prom with the lady psychologist he loved. Yes, Professor Barnes, the most proper member of Wadham Marshall's highly proper faculty, all of whom could freeze a freshman at 20 paces. Miss Emily Godsall noted that the professor of music appreciation seemed unusually quiet that night. For a lady instructor in psychology, Miss Godsall was highly romantic. Well, as they danced past the bandstand, Professor Barnes' weary gaze rested briefly on the orchestra. They were playing a sweet swing piece, and the reeds gave out with a very corny obligata. Professor Barnes shuddered. "Oh, strictly gut bucket," he said absently. Miss Emily Godsall stared at him, absolutely horrified. "Why, Benjamin!" Oh, I'm sorry, Emily. I'm really not myself tonight." "What was that word?" "Gut bucket. I picked it up in a magazine, Emily. It means not very good." "Oh," she said coldly. She had her own ideas about swing music and its jargon. Its appeal was based entirely on mass barbarism. Well, as the music ended, they were near the door to the gardens. I feel like walking in the moonlight, she said. Why, certainly, Emily. So after a few minutes, they found themselves seated on a secluded bench. I hope I'll like it, she said wistfully. It isn't easy to just tear up one's roots and leave. Leave, said the professor, his eyes widening. Yes, I'm going to Peru, she said solemnly. I've decided to do my doctor's thesis on behavior patterns among the Incas. There's really nothing to hold me here. Well, Professor realized that this was a time for drastic, direct action. He had only to look at her, and he knew it was now or not at all. After 5 years, a woman gets kind of impatient. Yeah, Emily, he fumbled, and then, while he was still wondering what to say next, the problem was miraculously solved. She was in his arms, and he was kissing her. But more important, she was kissing him right back. Oh, Benny, she said softly. I knew it would be like this. Well, while the campus was still talking with bated breath of love taking place among the faculty, two brisk strangers wearing derbies and identical plaid suits arrived in the city of Wada Marshall. After some little difficulty, they located a beer parlor. The bartender stared at them. Say, it's none of my business, but ain't you guys twins? Both heads bobbed. That's right, the one on the left said briskly. We're a brass team. What? A brass team, said the other one. I ride Sliphorn. He's a trumpet. The Bronson brothers, Chick and Marty, reading from left to right. Listen, said Mr. Chick Bronson. We're in search of a party named Barrelhouse Benny Barnes. He's quite a large party with a very nasty left hand. Yeah, his brother said reverently. The hottest piano of his time. The big spider back of the black and whites. The bartender couldn't help him. So by 3 o'clock, the Bronson brothers were reluctantly agreed that Barrelhouse Benny Barnes must still be listed among the missing. A careful check of the beer parlors and the solitary dance hall had not revealed a clue. Their last port of call was the campus drugstore. Well, one look at the nursery trade convinced them this was no place to locate a solid piano. Now they were standing by the nickel in the slot machine, morbidly listening to a character who makes music called Kay Kyser. Suddenly, Marty whirled and stared out the window. A familiar blimp-like figure was strolling sedately past. They dashed for the door. Benny! Benny, old pal! The professor's eyebrows raced up his forehead, then stopped in horrified disbelief. At long last, fate had caught up with Professor Barnes. Why, Benny, aren't you glad to see us? Benny nodded weakly, looking furtively up and down the street. Of course I am. Well, we'd have words with you, Benny. Benny nodded slowly, his features settling into lines of passive resistance, and said, This way. The brass team sniffed with polite disdain as they followed him down the corridor to his office. On all sides, they were surrounded by the sounds of heavy, cultured music. Oh, a carriage trade joint, huh? Hazarded Mr. Chick Bronson, pausing to strike a match on the bust of Mozart. Then he hurried these unwelcome guests into his offices. Well, how long you been holed up here? Chick asked finally. Well, long enough to become head of the Department of Music Appreciation, Benny said. I decided that I'd better retire from the band business. We weren't appreciated. Well, we are now. Now that swing is here to stay, we're the cream in their coffee. All the bands admit the Rhythm Rascals laid the foundation for swing. Why, we are famous, Benny. They gave him the lyrics then. The Rhythm Rascals, the grandpappies of swing, could name their own price if they reorganized. Dance bookers from the Palladium to the Trianon were ready, willing, and anxious to bring them in. Well, Benny listened and sighed heavily as they finished. Well, it sounds good. It sounds very good. But unfortunately, I cannot participate. As it happens, I'm engaged to a very lovely lady psychologist here at school. And how would my associates feel if they should hear that I was once known here and there as Barrelhouse Benny Barnes, the king of the piano? That's just what I've been wondering, said Mr. Chick Bronson, a little too casually to suit the professor. Well, Chick glanced briefly at his brother. The boys would have to hear of this treason. So opening the door, Chick said, Well, Benny, we'll be seeing you around. A week later, they turned up again. Listen, Chick said briskly. It's all set, Benny. We break in Atlantic City this weekend, a 2-night stand for the bookers to catch us. Catch us? Are you crazy? I told you I retired. Emily would never approve of this. Well, Mr. Chick Bronson's brief patience quivered and died at that. Now listen, Benny, if you really value your friendship with this music lover, you'll appear in Atlantic City this next weekend. Otherwise, we'll spill the whole can of beans. Besides, I've already signed up for that date. The original band, meaning you, too. Well, we may even end up getting a sponsor. We've already figured your angle, so no one will be the wiser. Yes? Well, play those lyrics. And in 5 minutes, even the reluctant professor was forced to admit that not all was lost yet. In return for Benny's appearing at this weekend stand, the Rhythm Rascals would forego all further claims on his barrelhouse touch. He could breeze into Atlantic City on Friday, get in a day's rehearsal, play the date, and then disappear into posterity, still the king of the piano. Benny gave a low C moan and agreed. Atlantic City had never seen so many alligators. The very rafters of the dance hall dripped jam lovers. Backstage, the Rhythm Rascals were noodling in that dressing room. In 5 minutes, they would go on. It was then that Miss Emily Godsall, big as life and twice as furious, burst into the dressing room. There you are, you king of the piano. Benny quailed at the sight of the splotchy anger in her cheeks. Now, Emily, if you'll only take a broad view of this. Emily laughed wildly and thrust a newspaper under his nose. Read that, she cried. Just read that. Benny's stricken gaze was already on the school daily. There on page 1 was a 6-column cut of the Rhythm Rascals. The banner line read, Professor Barnes exposed as hot man. Now, the story was even worse. It started luridly and held its pace. It read like this. Professor Barnes, Music Appreciation 2, was today revealed as none other than barrelhouse Benny Barnes, king of the piano, and so forth. It's true, but just the same, Emily. Emily had burst into tears. Jerking the ring from her engagement finger, she thrust it at him. Take it and forget me, Benjamin. It could never be. Well, for a moment, Benny stared dazedly at the ring in his hand, and then was suddenly conscious that Mr. Chick Bronson was easing out the door. An expression crossed Benny's face that was so bloodthirsty, so utterly lacking in refined emotion, that Chick froze in his tracks. I did it for your own good, Benny. Well, we just got to have you, Benny, for keeps. Well, Benny went completely native at that. He let out a wild bellow and instinctively cast around for a bottle to hurl. Well, it took the 5 of them to bustle Benny to that stage. Panting, they paused in the wings. Now, save it for the piano, Benny. Take it easy. You can slug me after the dance. Benny shook off his captors at that. And then don't think I won't. And as he strode across the stage, from the moment that Benny seated his huge frame behind the piano, there was a hushed silence. Mr. Barnes, glancing at that quiet, prove you a good audience, recognized 100 Wadham Marshall students packed around the stand. They were staring. Yep, staring as they had for years with that annoying adenoidal expression. Now, Benny glared at his associates of the brass and reeds, and he said, All right, get in there and ride. Get on and ride. Stay with me if you can. He brought down his left hand, and the youngest jitterbugs felt a thrill of sheer ecstasy as he came out on a dominant 7th, jiving into the St. Louis blues. He was strictly leading with his chin, but a man who has already lost all doesn't worry over another beating. He forgets it's been done to death, and people dare you to improve on the great arrangements that have been written around. He forgets that and gives, and Benny gave. He gave it in spades, disdaining the time-honored grooves, ignoring hallowed figures and patterns. His downstairs hand was savage, beating it, defying his own men to play around the wild melody. But somehow they did. Benny ended on a fadeaway flourish, a typical barrelhouse touch that used to bring down the house, and it still did. The cats shrieked and cried and stamped for more. It was mob hysteria, and it was violent, but then so was the music. Miss Emily Godsall, trapped in that shouting, stamping throng, stared about her. Something warm stirred faintly within her as Benny sidled into Basin Street. Miss Godsall's fascinated gaze was still on her ex-fiancé as she experienced a sudden, almost shameful pride. Here, Benjamin was a giant among men. It made her think vaguely of huge tribal chieftains beating their tom-toms. She'd have been horrified to learn she was becoming a hepcat. 2 hours later, limp from their exertions, the Rhythm Rascals left the stand, their reputations made for all time. Benny surged through the mob of bookers, musicians, and cats jammed around the dressing room, his associates trailing in his wake. Once inside, they bolted the door. Mr. Chick Bronson looked wearily at his piano and said, I'm ready now, Benny, and no matter how much it hurts, it was worth it, kid. But Benny wasn't listening. He was staring at Miss Emily Godsall, seated on the divan where she had been waiting for the past hour. There was a shiny look in her eye that might mean, Emily, you're not mad? No, she said softly. No, I'm not mad, Benjamin. Coloring, she looked at the floor. I was just thinking I could probably do my doctor's thesis on behavior patterns among jitterbugs. Well, Benny did something then that no proper faculty member should ever do. He threw his arms around her and openly, brazenly kissed her. So there.
And that's the story Hot Piano by Richard English. Spun for you by the star of screen, stage, and radio, Kay Kyser. If you men have a favorite yarn you'd like to hear in this series of Yarns for Yanks, just drop us a line. Write Special Service, Los Angeles, USA, or the station to which you're listening. This is Frank Graham speaking. Keep listening for more Yarns for Yanks. Yarns for Yanks was produced for you fighting men of the United Nations by the Special Service Division of the War Department of the United States of America. This program has been a part of our English language shortwave service.
Welcome back. This is such a charming story. My appreciation for it grows each time I listen. While Kyser isn't a great actor, he's a solid storyteller and really brings the story to life. I loved the cute little touch when he came to the part where the band members reference listening to Kay Kyser. The story is an interesting time capsule of an era of music, but also has themes that are far more timeless. While it's not a great story, I think it can resonate with people in 2023 as much as it did in 1943. It's time for me to close up the old snack wagon, but don't worry, we'll be back with another serving of old-time radio goodness before you know it. If you want to enjoy some of our longer-form podcasts, you can feast away at my website at greatdetectives.net. Your emails are also welcome at adam@snackwagon.net.
The Old Time Radio Snack Wagon comes to you from Boise, Idaho. Your host is Adam Graham. Sound production is by Rhines Media, LLC. You can listen to past episodes of the Old Time Radio Snack Wagon as well as connect on social media at our website at snackwagon.net. Email suggestions for episodes to adam@snackwagon.net. This has been the Old Time Radio Snack Wagon.
Until next time, goodbye.